The nightmare for Charleston is over. The convicted Emanuel AME shooter has been sentenced to death for the murders of 9 people of God at the church in 2015. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down one more time with Liz Alston, the church's historian. Liz!
Hi, Quintin.
It's so good to see you.
It's better to see you.
As a matter of fact, as you know, the nightmare is over.
The nightmare is over.
As you know, Dylan Roof was sentenced to death for the murders of 9 people at Mother Emanuel on June 17, 2015. I know I backshoot this question a lot, but tell me, where is your heart right now?
Well, my heart is with the families.
Mm-hmm.
My heart is with Mother Emanuel. My heart is with my church. And I feel that after a year and a half, almost 600 days,
Right.
we have weathered this heavy burden. The nightmare is over. I hope for a lot of people that the burden has been lifted.
Mm.
A lot of people are saying justice has been served.
Right.
I certainly believe that justice has been served.
Mm. As you know, right after that particular verdict from the jury, the first it was the defense of Dylan Roof who made the statement basically saying, hey, they're sorry for what happened.
Yes.
And then later, of course, the family of Dylan Roof basically says, hey, we're sorry for what transpired on that particular night, and we will always love Dylan Roof. But during that particular time when those statements were made, himself, Roof, didn't even make a comment. He seems like he's not remorseful. Why do you think so?
I don't know. I can't see or understand how someone could kill 9 people and hold no remorse. I guess only God knows. He says that, let me make it crystal clear. You know, I did it. I'm not sorry I did it. I don't feel any remorse for the families. So, a lot of people said they want him to live so they could find out. But there are so many people that are opening fire on people.
Right.
And I suppose my question is, if we understand it, then how could we cure these people? I don't know. I'm not a psychoanalyst. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a counselor. I'm just an ordinary American who feels that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So if you kill 9 people and he fits all of the criteria for a death penalty punishment, who am I to argue against such facts?
Well, he's arguing that he wants a retrial. He wants to live.
Well, I have been listening. Today is January 10th.
Right.
You know, some almost 600 days since this has happened.
Right.
And you find that he offered no defense. He
Right.
not called one witness. He showed no emotion. So, which means that if he wants another trial, for the life of me, I do not understand how the criteria would be for a trial or a new trial. There have been, for you to have a successful appeal, there should be some injustices that have been carried out. The judge did ever bent over backwards to make sure that had competency hearings. He did not publicize them. They were under wraps. He wanted to have his own defense.
Right.
He allowed him to do that. The penalty phase, he allowed him to represent himself. So I'm thinking that as a frustrated lawyer,
Right.
what grounds would he have? Because the system has been fair. If you read the 4th Amendment,
Right.
that you have witnesses of your peers, all of those things that I have seen that the justice system has bent over backward for this defendant.
Right.
So what about the victims? So I feel that justice has been served. I just hope that the bad example that he has set will certainly not be copied by anyone. I hope the families find peace. You know, as a member of this community and as the historian and archivist and a member or trustee of Mother Emanuel,
Right.
I sometimes was a little frustrated with Gergel because he seemed to make sure that all of the defendants' rights were adhered to, and while my heart was with the victim.
Right.
Now that the trial is over,
Right.
then I feel that he has done everything that should have been done from a judicial area, because he knew that if he was not fair, that he would have grounds for appeal. So I just don't know what appeal or rationale he would have for the appeal process.
Yeah.
But like you said in the beginning, I'm glad that the nightmare is over. I'm glad that the families have sustained themselves.
Right.
They sat for 6 weeks. They did not have any outbursts. They did not speak out of turn.
Right.
They listened intently. I followed it very closely.
Right.
I have listened to the family members as a person.
Right.
I live 1 block from the courthouse.
Right.
I've been aware of the proceedings. I just refused to sit for hours at a trial when I knew all of the things, that I could read the transcript.
Right.
And I'm saying that the death penalty, I did some quick facts.
Right.
Found out that about 3 states that have abolished the death penalty. Places like New Mexico and Nebraska, Connecticut and Pennsylvania, and I think even Maryland. I think Pennsylvania has a moratorium since 2015, but these are recent areas.
Right.
But you find out that since there are about almost 3,000 people on the death row,
Right.
and about 26 or 2,500 people have been executed, since a certain time. So I'm thinking that the death penalty certainly is well and alive, and I'm sure that those persons who deserve it, there are a lot of people will say, well, Liz, blacks have been, inadvertently or adversely affected by the death penalty. But I'm saying that all of those ancestors, persons that went before, they were executed, and I don't hear any outcry. So now until later, now you have this man, this person full of self-hatred, walk into a Bible study after being invited. And I understand that Reverend Pinckney invited him in after 45 minutes. Then he just emptied his 45 millimeter, 77 shots.
Wow.
And if that's not a rationale for the death penalty, I don't know what is.
Well, let me walk you across the street, because as you know, and as we are sitting here right now, 6:20 on Tuesday afternoon, after the verdict was given, I haven't gotten a statement from Solicitor Scarlett Wilson. And as you know, they want to try him on state level. And I was thinking to myself, here we go again for those family members. They're going to have to relive this all over again on the state side.
Well, I was listening to that from a judicial and a rational point of view.
Yeah.
That, like I said, there are states that are abolishing the death penalty, and which means it will be 7 to 8 years before the actual punishment would be carried out. What would happen if these things happen? Then the state trial, which will come, later on, that if one doesn't fit the bill, the other will. So I was feeling the same way, but listening to the commentators saying that, well, okay, the state, why try him if you've gotten the death penalty? But with all of these Supreme Court decisions and judicial decisions, that if one, say maybe the federal trial gets thrown out through appeal or something, abolish it, maybe even the Supreme Court or the state Supreme Court or whatever, then they will have a backup with the state trial. And for that reason, for the judicial process to sustain itself, then that's one rationale for it. But like I said, the families have gone through a lot, but these are strong people.
Yes, they are.
These are forgiving people.
Right.
I think that these people are a little different because, these are not the other peoples aren't Christians. These are members of my church. These are people that I am very much in tune with. These are people that I talk to on a daily basis. I'll get calls at night and say, Liz, let me tell you what happened at the trial today. So which means that by listening to the sisters or the cousins,
Right.
or the sons and daughters or grandchildren of the victims, I get a different perspective of them. And these are very strong people. And as long as justice, I think that, of course, I feel justice delayed is justice denied. But even if it were delayed, I feel that the Constitution or the moral fiber that makes up these people, the Lord will sustain them for whatever reasons that they need to have before complete justice is obtained.
Well, as you know, Sunday, I believe January 15th, is Martin Luther King's birthday.
Yes.
And we observe his day the next day with parades and whatnot. But that's going to be another historic day.
Yes,
Because,
January 16th, right.
Right, because on that Sunday, you're going to be sitting in the pews with a lot of your members of Emanuel AME Church, and you're going to be listening to Reverend Manning speak, really deliver a sermon after this verdict. What do you expect from him?
Well, you know, I go to church practically every Sunday that I'm here.
Yeah.
And even this last Sunday, I thought that he would speak more about what he expected of the verdict.
Right.
But he kind of left it alone. So I feel that maybe the burden would have been lifted. I would probably make sure that I write down the scripture that he uses on the 15th, this Sunday.
Right.
And not being privy to his sermon.
Right, right.
But I feel that he will probably have some quotes from Martin Luther King. I was thinking he might have some quotes for Du Bois, who would say probably the most segregated hour in America is 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Or you will finding out that maybe he will talk about King and his character, what he stood for, the books that he has written. It's
Right.
going to be interesting.
Yes, indeed.
I think that to answer a question, I would be happy to do an interview with you to find out what he says.
We can do that.
I can hardly wait to find out how he is going to do. But for the last couple of times, and I think Reverend Manning has been at Emanuel for about 5-6 months. And a lot of people come to church. You certainly won't find a hate-filled sermon. You will find a sermon that's uplifting. You will find a sermon, I think, that would probably help mend the hurt and the disappointments that these people have had. Reverend Manning is a young man himself, almost just a little older than Reverend Pinckney. And so to succeed one of his predecessors, he has some, in my opinion, some of the same characteristics: a quick smile, wit. Reverend Pinckney was a political man.
Right.
Reverend Manning, militaristic. He comes from the military.
Right.
And so I find myself comparing the two of them. Both of them were long-winded, but that has nothing to do with the sermon. But really, my curiosity knows no bounds to say what he will speak and how he will tie in Martin Luther King's birthday.
Right.
And the first Sunday after the verdict or the sentencing of Dylan Roof will be an item of interest.
Were we waiting for it?
And like I said, I would like to say to Charleston, thank you for your love, perseverance. Love for Mother Emanuel has been pointing out. I get calls on a daily basis from people around the country who are saying that this church is placed on international scene. And I think we have risen to the top. That Emanuel has been a beacon of light for the rest of the nation. That's what I'm hearing. Persons would say, you know, how do you feel? And I think that humility certainly is a part of my repertoire.
Right.
I find myself listening to the things I've said before, the forgiveness aspect.
Right.
And my answer to that is, I'm now believing what I pray. Because in the Our Father prayers it says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what we do. We've been praying that. Now we have a chance to practice it. I'm now practicing what I have been praying.
There you go. That is so good to hear. Well, Liz Alston, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
It's been a pleasure.
Always. Thank you. Likewise. Thank you.